Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 13, Far Beyond the Stars. One of the greatest episodes of Deep Space Nine, usually up there in the top three, probably with In the Pale Moonlight and It's Only a Paper Moon, stuff like that. It's usually considered one of the best episodes. To me, it's almost similar to Inner Light for the Next Generation. Kind of like that's considered the best episode of Next Generation. They're both kind of about like the captain being a different character. They're not 100% the same by any means necessary. But there's definitely a kind of a correlation there that I think is interesting. So this episode was directed by Avery Brooks, which is super awesome. And I feel like he's the only one that could have directed this. And they kind of talk about that in the documentary, What We Left Behind. It's interesting to note that he directed this, but he's also the main character of this episode. Where when you look at other episodes that they're directed by cast members, their character is usually kind of a sideline character. Like I think of like the first time Riker, Jonathan Frakes directed an episode, Riker only has one line and he just kind of briefly walks in and walks out. It's with Data's daughter. So it's really kind of amazing that Avery Brooks not only directed this one, but also was the main focus of it. So that just shows like how talented of a director he really was. So this episode is all about basically Cisco having visions from the prophets, and it shows him like kind of bouncing in time where I think it's the early 50s. I think it was 1953, and he's a writer for a science fiction magazine. And what makes this episode unique is you finally see the entire cast, but without the alien makeup on. And it's amazing to kind of watch just all the different things he has to go through. And they touch on a lot of social topics, kind of like they did in Past Tense, where we see like Rene Auberjonois, the actor who plays Odo, and he's like the editor of the magazine. Michael Dorn, the actor who plays Worf, plays like a baseball player, which, quick random trivia note there, this is technically the at least the fourth time I think that we've seen him in other makeup. The first time doesn't really count. He was just kind of a background character in Ryza. But the first real time that we ever saw Worf with different makeup than Klingon makeup was in the episode where we meet his brother, and they're kind of guiding people through the holodeck. And Penny Gerald played his brother's like wife, and plays Cassidy Yates in this episode. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. Terry Farrell, Dax, plays the secretary. That kind of comes in halfway, which, to be honest, I felt like they just kind of wrote her in because they didn't know what else to do. But it's funny to watch her talk because every character kind of has the interest of the real version of them. So like she's like chewing gum and she's like, "Oh, I like the girl with the worm in her belly. It's gross, but it's kind of cool." So we see her. Jake is Jimmy, who has the very unique, he actually uses a racial slur. And when he does, I actually had to go back and rewind it. I was like, did he just say that? And because it totally caught me off guard. And to be honest, like, I don't remember. I was alive when this episode came out. I was like at least 10, I think. But I have like zero memory of Deep Space Nine as a kid because it didn't interest me. And for that scene, like, I'm curious of how big it was. Like, did it like make headlines? Did people talk about it? Because that's something that's it's basically the closest to swearing, and it is swearing, that Star Trek has ever come at the time. So I think that was really interesting. Kalamini, his character likes robots because he's an engineer in real life. Armin Shimmerman knocked this episode out of the park, where he's always coming to bat for Benny Russell, Cisco's character. And it's just great to see Armin Shimmerman like without the Ferengi makeup. I've said it before, I'm a big fan of the Beauty and the Beast show with Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. And he plays in a lot of those episodes, so I already knew what he looked like, and but I just thought it was kind of cool. Alexander Siddig and Nana Visitor play a married couple, and that was kind of cool because they're at the time of this they were married in real life. And God, just everybody's in this episode, and they all do so good that I want to give them all their props. The actors that play Wei Yun and Gul Dukat play cops, and they do so good. The only Jeffrey Combs kind of stood out a little bit because, like, at this point he's played so many different characters, and like, to see him, he immediately took me out of the episode because I know what he looks like from, like, the reanimated series and stuff like that, and to see him just play a cop, like, instantly took me out. So I still think he did a great job, and it was interesting to see those two characters as cops, those two characters as, like, the law enforcement, and then when they just finally attack Benny Russell, it was hard to do. We see the actor that plays Martok, he plays the artist, and it was so great that throughout the whole time he's there, he has a cigar in his mouth, and having the cigar in his mouth kind of changes the way he talks, and he sounds like he does when he has, like, the Klingon false teeth and everything, and only at one time does he take the cigar out and just talk normally, and it just kind of catches you off guard, and you're like, oh, that's what he sounds like? And I already mentioned it before, Penny Gerald returns as Yates for this episode, which she was doing another show at the time, so we haven't seen her for quite a while, but it was really cool that she was able to come back. So I just went through everybody because this episode is so good. I wanted everybody to get their due. And Nog. I can't believe I forgot Nog. I'm sorry. We see Nog for the first time without makeup. So that was kind of cool. He plays the street vendor, which at this point I think he had already done his episode of Voyager as well. So we'd kind of see him a couple of times. But he does a great job. Everybody does such a good job in this episode. So we basically just see Benny Russell and what it's like to be a black writer in the early 50s. And not even that, just we see the women characters as well, where they want to see a picture of all the writers. And Nana's character or Major Kira's character and Cisco are basically told, okay, you guys can sleep in that time because the readers don't want to know that a woman or a black man are writing stories for them. And so we deal with the racism with the 50s, and that's where, like, the Gul Dukat and Wei Yun come in, where, like, all Cisco does, or Benny, all Benny does is come out of the door, and the cops just jump on him, like, what are you doing, like this late at night? Why are you dressed so well? Like, what's going on? And they just kind of attack him. And then finally we see Jimmy, Jake's character, ends up getting shot because he was trying to break into a car, and rather than question him or stop him or anything, they just shoot him. So it's a really difficult episode. Michael Dorn has a lot of really great lines about how he's allowed to play baseball with people, but he's not allowed to live next to the white people. And it's a difficult episode to really watch, but it does it in such a good way that it allows people to understand, at least in my opinion. And so that's what Star Trek's all about, and I thought this episode did it perfectly. Like I said, to me, this is one of the best episodes of the entire franchise. It's guaranteed in my top 10. So for those who have seen this episode, what did you think about all of the actors? What did you think about the verbiage that they use? What did you think about the message behind this story? Like, did you watch it and did you appreciate it, or did you just get distracted because, hey, look, there's Quark without the ears? Go ahead, let me know what you guys think about this episode, because I could talk about it forever. Thank you guys for everything, for the subscriptions, for the comments. I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this, and I will see you guys next time for One Little Ship.